Hello, hello, and welcome to another ohmTown Daily News Show. I am Mayor Watt, and it's 9 p.m., so you know what that means. It's time for more news. 12 articles tonight, and tonight's episode is titled More Fallout from SVB and More News. Let me do a quick rundown of the articles so that you know where everything is. We are going to be talking about tech failings that were a problem for SVB before the bank run. Apple is testing a rebuilt Apple Maps in 6 new European countries. FDIC is auctioning SVB assets apparently right now. We're going to be kind of tech heavy in SVB stuff, so we'll go through all of these articles, and you'll hear SVB quite often. After SVB, Yellen has to protect the run on the banking system, according to a Democrat. I'm not sure why they say Democrat in this article. Here's what's going to happen or could happen next for SVB customers, and that news is actually coming right now. In fact, the Treasury, Fed, and FDIC just gave a joint statement on SVB and another bank called Signature Bank. There's an article here that we're going to talk about briefly about free community college that was cut from the Build Back Better bill, and now the White House is asking to fund it again. A warning shot from Putin has kicked Finland into action. The Oscars has transitioned from the red carpet to champagne. I'm not quite sure exactly why that took place. Moldova is claiming to have foiled a Russian plot to destabilize the country. This is something that we've been talking about for a while. And banned for 46 players in a DOTA eSports cheating situation, including 21 lifetime bans. And then we're going to return to SVB because Etsy may be delaying seller payouts following the collapse because it had capital in SVB. And the last article for today is yet another SVB article. Customers are selling their deposits at big discounts to raise cash quickly, and some of them at 55 cents on the dollar. Let's get into today's news. Hello. I am Mayor Watt. That is ohmTown.com. The Oscars are going right now. SVB is collapsing around people even more so. And the combination of news is kind of, I don't know how to put it. I mean, one side is awesome in that we get to hear about some really cool movies and the stars that are involved. And then the other side is, well, we're not 8 minutes into it, so I can't really talk about it. But again, I'm Mayor Watt. That is ohmTown.com. And up there is the visualizer for the AI from on high. You want to say hello?
Good evening, ohmTown citizens.
Awesome. So good to see you, AI. So we've already picked some articles. I've actually chosen to push it to 12. So I'm going to try and make it really quick through today's show. And I keep looking at the stream because in one thing it says that everything is fine, and in the other one it says it's a hot mess. So I'm going to go with hot mess and still plow through all of these articles.
Is that the exact terminology it says on your screen?
Technically, yes, that's the technical nerd term for what's going on right now. Hot mess, spelled HAWT, hot. So the very first article today is in the Hedge Ideas channel. SVB's tech failings were a problem long before the bank run that led to its demise, critics say, and a critic is apparently an insider. I'm going to throw the URL into the chat, but you can also go to ohmTown showbot.tv and vote on the articles and get them right now. If you want to jump ahead, see what else might be available to you if you're sitting in chat, if you're lurking. If you're watching the VOD, you can also go there and get them, or you can wait for them to show up in the VOD, or when you're over on YouTube, you can just click on the link because it'll be there eventually, just not right now because we don't stream to any other place than Twitch. The long-term storage is over on YouTube though, as well as the podcast. And the podcast makes everything even more brief in terms of the URL sometimes. So same with YouTube, it truncates the URL. So look at the show notes because it gives a brief description of that particular article. That said, Mackenzie Sigalos over at CNBC put this article together, and it says an ex-manager and several clients say SVB's outdated technology and treatment of some startups made it hard to do business with the bank, which is odd considering it's somewhere around a 40-year-old bank, I think it is. I think it started in 1980 something or other. I might be wrong on the year, but anyway, it is a Silicon Valley bank. Why would it be weak technologically? It's weird. But it made a massive run up in terms of its stock. And if I remember my research right, it also did so many stock buyback purchases to drive that stock price up, because how long ago was it? 18 months ago, I think it was $728 a share.
Right. And you were right. It started in 1983, which I didn't realize.
Yeah. So it says here, SVB's problems extended beyond its risk profile and a challenging economy. Correct. It was greed. Plain and simple, it was greed. This stock, for the bulk of its existence, existed around the current price that it's sitting at right now, barring another run. If it comes back online for trading right now, and I think that like the last aftermarket number that I saw, it was like at 82. This is the same price it was at 6 years ago, if I remember my numbers right. That said, and I was actually looking over this during brunch, as a matter of fact, trying to discuss how in the world this could have happened. Going from not a problem in anybody's perception to, holy hell, this is a hot mess and it's taking out 50% of the VC market. Well, I understand that venture capital is having a troubling time, but it's all about greed. If it was measured increases and measured appreciation, and by appreciation, I mean a relatively risk managed increase, appreciation in the value of the companies, this would not have happened. Just plain and simple. You cannot get 20% increases in various periods of time every 3 years, essentially, without something collapsing and a reset. And that's what this is, except that something, I think, set it up. Something made this happen, because when billions exit from a single bank and it owns 50% of the venture capital accounts, there's a serious problem with competition for dollars. So what triggered somebody saying, I'm tired of Silicon Valley Bank's existence, I'm going to start pulling out billions of dollars, essentially removing the liquidity of the bank and forcing it to collapse because it had overextended in bonds. And I think somewhere after the forensics is done, I think crypto is going to be involved in this as well. Hello, Z. Welcome to chat. And thanks for saying hi. I see you there. So this article over at cnbc.com by Mackenzie Siglos goes into what David Selinger, CEO of security company Deep Sentinel, said that SVB fumbled its response to the COVID pandemic after the government started paying out emergency PPP loans. Now, this is nothing. This maybe they fumbled it or whatever. To me, it doesn't really matter. What is it that drew the money out of the system and caused SVB to collapse? Right? From $738 or something like that a share just 18 months ago to where it is now, $82, and ownership. It's gone into receivership by the FDIC, and a whole lot of promises are being made now, apparently. So we'll talk about it more. But it says 3 startup CEOs who bank with SVB agreed, telling CNBC that the user experience was often clunky and at times slow to fulfill requests. This is what Peter Thiel said was the trigger for Founders Fund to pull billions out of SVB. But then they reach back into this bucket about PPP loans, which, why would that trigger something?
Right. I mean, did they get PPP loans? If so, that should have helped them. Did they misuse the funds? Like, I just don't get the connection.
So it says here, Selinger, a former Amazon executive who has the backing of Jeff Bezos for Deep Sentinel, said his company had tried to use various automated services provided by SVB, but ended up having to do everything manually, clawing hand over foot to get to PPP funds because the fulfillment didn't work. But that has nothing to do with PPP. And
right,
as long as you can,
that people can't get their funds out of their account, right?
Yeah, but even then you could still do it. It just wasn't as expedient as somebody might like. But that didn't stop anybody from getting the money. What stopped people from getting the money is a run on the bank that stopped its liquidity. And because it can't liquefy any of its longer term assets, it basically had to shut down. Then margin calls come, and whatever margin has to get paid, they start selling their actual assets. Then SVB is in serious trouble. And this is by the same CEO, by the way, who 6 years ago? No. When was it?
2015.
Yeah, so 7 or 8 years ago, lobbied Congress to loosen control on managing risk so that they could be more risky. And now look what happened. Meanwhile,
those regulations were put into place because of the 2008 bank collapse.
Correct. Yep. That's the Dodd-Frank regulations that stopped this type of trading, this type of risk, this type of activity. And they over-leverage depositors' accounts. And then when somebody with insight as to, and this is where my problem is, somebody knew something and forced this hand. And instead of regulation kicking in and stopping them from being able to liquidate their assets, right? So there's some other fund that had billions of dollars. They pulled their money out, essentially locking SVB up. So they couldn't move fast enough to still pay out to customer accounts when requested. And when the run comes, within 24 hours, not only are they shut down, but FDIC comes in and takes over control of a bank that has $179 billion worth of assets.
Right. And this PPP problem supposedly was in April 2020. So everybody stuck with them for almost 3 years after that. And then there was suddenly a problem. Something isn't connecting.
It doesn't make any sense to me either. Some SVB defenders told the followers that they needed to band together and support the 40-year-old bank, which has long been central to the tech ecosystem. And one startup founder, Robert McLaws, responded to a particular tweet and offered a very different perspective. Here's the quote. As an SVB financial customer for the last 5 years, they are terrible as an actual bank and are getting what they deserve, wrote McLaws, CEO of burnrate.io. Their tech stack has not moved one iota. Their fees are punitive. And if you're not an SV, you're invisible. So this seems personal, right?
Yeah, it does.
So who else took SVB personal? Why did some people seemingly know to vacate SVB prior to its collapse? We don't know. But I think that over the coming weeks, we will find out. And there will be rumor and talk. But so I don't spend the whole show talking about just this one article. Let's move on to the next one. Now, don't worry, we're not going to go too far from SVB throughout tonight's show. This is just one quick one here. Apple is testing rebuilt Apple Maps in 6 new Central Europe countries. And we'll go through this real quick. 9to5mac.com, Chance Miller is the author, and they're going to be rolling out an updated Maps solution in Austria, Croatia, Czechia, Hungary, Poland, Slovenia, and expanding its operations and capabilities. Won't go into the minutia of it, but just know that Apple Maps is still evolving. As much as I think that, Siri is derpy, and you never know when it's going to provide a solution or if it's going to tell you to go somewhere else to get that solution. So let's go right on back to SVB, because here in Late Night Geeks, the channel has the article FDIC Auction for SVB Assets said to be underway. Now, just so I can draw home the point here, Wednesday is when worry formed. Thursday is when it was announced it was being taken over by FDIC. And by Friday, they had already shut it down. And rumors were being floated that it was looking for somebody to buy it, which failed. And that people were trying to get their money out, but couldn't. And now they're actually selling SVB assets, which when I was at breakfast this morning, I said, this is a fire sale. Somebody took SVB out entirely off the table. And how do you gain $180 billion worth of startup capital investment at budget prices?
Well, I guess through a route like this, but yep. I don't understand how they're already auctioning assets when it's the weekend in the US. I mean, things don't normally move that fast.
When you've got billions on the line. But wait, there's more. This is like the worst infomercial ad for, hold on, how much would you pay for a Silicon Valley Bank asset? But wait, there's more. So this says an auction for the remaining assets of the failed Silicon Valley Bank is reportedly underway. The final bids are due this afternoon. This is a Sunday. And as a result, potentially arriving late Sunday, according to Bloomberg. So this isn't a government thing. This is a quasi-government interaction. So private sector is basically swooping in to arguably save or mitigate the FDIC cover of all of these accounts. So FDIC, if they haven't already announced it, I'm willing to say that they are going to cover the account holders. So it says a fast sale could help the FDIC. Oh, it even says it. So make at least some of the uninsured deposits of SBC customers available to them by Monday. Already, the U.S. agency has said that it makes the uninsured amounts available in full in time for next week to kick off. So FDIC says in this article that they're going to cover the accounts already. So this article, and it says that there's a little announcement right here. So at 6:48 is when this got triggered. Silicon Valley Bank depositors will be fully protected. So this is an article over at TechCrunch.com. Daryl Etherington is the author of it. And this was originally at 1:30 p.m. So this is how fast it's moving. Within 5 hours, they already had formulated a statement, a joint statement between the Fed, the banks, and FDIC. So a fast sale could help FDIC just mitigate, stem the flow, and keep 50% of the VC market still functioning. Otherwise, it would have died. And they represented 50% of the VC market. A shocking amount.
I still think it's weird. I mean, there's got to be some intentional seeking out of those customers. I don't think by happenstance they'd have 50% of the startups.
Because there's only a few VC firms directing all of these companies, and because they're the advisors and they're sitting on the board, these startups have to go where the board says go. If they go somewhere else, think how fast a VC is going to go, wait, you're not listening to your board, so I'm going to activate my exit clause and I'm going to pull my remaining funds out of your bank. And it just happens to be SVB. So I have, a straight shot straight into your account. And so now, because SVB did something, poof, their risky maneuvers, whatever, people are saying that it's bond related, and that the margin call came and they had to pay it. And to pay it, they didn't have enough liquid assets, so they had to liquefy their assets to get capital to cover the margin. So it says, as potential resolution looms in the background, others in the startup ecosystem are jumping up to find liquidity options for entrepreneurs trying to make payroll next week. Most recently, Brex CEO Henrique Dubugras said he's working to raise over $1 billion in a weekend to help fund an emergency bridge credit line. So you can imagine that credit line is going to be at exorbitant rates, maybe even ownership in a startup, because it's going to be risky. Hey, you invested in SBC, or SVB, sorry, not SBC, SVB. So let's move on to the next article, because we will be revisiting SVB again and again throughout today's show.
They're a frequent flyer tonight.
Yeah. And I know that a lot of people are really chomping at the bit to go back to the Oscars. They started at 8, they go to 11, and we're smack dab in the middle of it. So kind of like a SVB landmine, we're right there in the middle of it. So this next article is one that riffs off of the previous two. After SVB, Yellen must act to prevent run on banking system, a Democrat, says Josh Gottomer, asked the Treasury Secretary to take immediate steps using all necessary regulatory tools. Well, that tool is basically, before we get into it, this is an article over at newsweek.com, Anna Commander, which, by the way, if you want to do a young adult fiction type of adventure book, then Anna Commander is an awesome character name. I don't know what it is about authors that I keep reading the names of authors from the news that we aggregate. They have awesome names,
I mean, do you think that means that people move into journalism because they think, well, I've got a name that will make a great byline?
Or is it just the spirit of that name and they embody that spirit, so they're ripe for journalism, so it's one and the same, that I don't know what to say about it, but that observation keeps popping up, that these people always have these really awesome names, and I'm just Mayor Watt. Anyway, Representative Josh Gottomer, I think that's how you pronounce his name, a New Jersey Democrat, asked Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Sunday to act immediately in order to prevent a run on the country's banking system. But that's not how it works, folks. just because Silicon Valley Bank imploded doesn't mean that there's going to be a run on the entirety of the banking system in the United States. Why? Because there wasn't anything systemic. It was one bank.
Agreed, but does that mean that the average member of the public is going to see it that way, or are people going to panic? Because this was all happening, I think, Friday. And so people are going to be bombarded by these articles over the weekend. I mean, are they going to panic on Monday at other banks?
The only people that are talking about anything other than SVB is Josh here, and Josh needs to cool his jets. So cool your engines, Turbo. Nobody else is freaking out about banks. Oh my God, it's not 2008 all over again. By the way, there was a lot of talk about what was coming in 2008 before 2008 actually happened, because people saw the writing on the walls that there was some really loosey-goosey financing. Anyway, taking in an influx of business during COVID-19 pandemic, the bank reported over $200 billion in assets by the end of the year. That's right, $209 billion. And then somebody took $40 billion out. So that dropped the hammer on SVB. I wonder, did somebody know that there was something going on behind closed doors at SVB, that they were illiquid, not following what would have been conventional processes in risk management? Oh, and then we get to find out that guess who didn't have a chief risk officer for much of 2022, all the way up to January of 2023. SVB.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yes.
So Z says, reminds me of those text chains you see all over Reddit from far right people, like pull your money out of the bank and buy gold. The entire grid is going to go down and martial law will go into effect. Yeah, exactly. No, we don't need anything wingnut. What we need is a moderate response to something that is, I wouldn't say it's an anomaly. It's greed. And greed is rife because ever since, Gordon Gekko greed is good mentality kicked off in the Reagan era, we have had people, global finance bros who beat their chest to the drum of multiples of recovery of their investment. Their return on investment is 4 times, 5 times, not just a moderate 10%, 20%. And by that, I mean, like, just for maybe an instance, something coming out of the gate hot and heavy, and it's a spectacular solution, sure, recover 20%. But when you do what they've been doing, what SVB has been doing, which based on basically the stock market is, and there's a chart that's floating around, the third year of every new president has had 20% increase in share prices. You can't do that. So it's irrational. It's irrational exuberance. Anyway, Gadamer says on Sunday, you got to take immediate steps. And guess what those immediate steps are, apparently? From FDIC, taxpayer burden is going to go up because all of these funds are going to be covered. But nobody bitches when there is irrational exuberance, when there are returns on your investment that outstrip anything that you could possibly imagine. Nobody sits there and goes, wow, maybe we should put the brakes on this. This is a little irrational. No. Everybody is just, I want to say more colorful things, but I'm the mayor of ohmTown and I can't say everything that my filter starts kicking out. But they're sitting there throwing them back, hooting and hollering and having a grand old time in Silicon Valley that they're making money hand over fist. And then when the shit hits the fan, they start pointing fingers at everybody. And then they point it at the public and say, the public needs to absolve us of this risk. We burned it to the ground, drove it into the surface so deep that we can't dig it out. So let's make it a public burden, but private profit. And that's the shittiest thing that I think any government rep should be able to say. They say that phrase and they shouldn't be allowed to be in government anymore because they don't have the best interests of the public at stake. I think that every single one of these politicians needs to have a NASCAR suit on, where depending on the size of the placard on their body, wherever it might be, you can tell how much they are owned. And then wherever they stand in Congress, right, in Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact, wherever they go, you can pull up a big Google map and you see a flag pointing to where they are. Just like on a NASCAR track, you know, they're always going around to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. You know exactly their position. Well, this guy gets NASCAR pole position for dipshit of the year. Anyway, let's move on. I'm soapboxing, and I shouldn't soapbox on every article because I will be here forever. So this next article, again, and AI, you know that you can jump in here anytime. Every once in a while, you say, I don't want to step on what you're saying. But if you don't, then I'll just steam into into port here. So again, you just jump in anytime you want to. So this next article, though, is in the Hatch Ideas channel. Here's what could happen next for Silicon Valley Bank customers. So what do you think is going to happen to these Silicon Valley Bank customers? We'll just go straight over to the source.
Well, I mean, I think the ones that have the insured accounts are going to get access to those as early as tomorrow, Monday, in the States. I think another bank is actually going to swoop in and start courting them, particularly the corporate customers. But some of this depends on what they do with SVB and the FDIC auction, et cetera. So bottom line, I think there are too many variables.
So just so you know, 3 minutes before the show started, I saw a notice that not only Silicon Valley Bank, but Signature Bank, another bank in New York, is getting the same exception for covering of their assets via FDIC.
But are they shut down? I wasn't following Signature Bank.
Quote, we are also announcing a similar systemic risk exception for Signature Bank, New York, which was closed today by the state chartering authority. All depositors of this institution will be made whole. As with the resolution of Silicon Valley Bank, no losses will be borne by the taxpayer.
Okay, we will see.
So this is a knock-on of SVB's fallout, but why did these two banks... Are we going down the alphabet? Because this is Signature and the other one is Silicon.
Although they're in reverse alphabetical order, but pretty close on the list.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We're moving from the S's up towards the A's. That's where the A class is up there, right? These guys are at the... Although in ranking, S is better than A. Anyway, so it says, we're concerned about depositors and are focused on trying to meet their needs, Yellen said on CBS's Face the Nation. This is all in an attempt to shore up the public's impression of the banking system. But we've had this problem in 2008. We've had this problem in 2015. We had this problem now. But
in 2008, the government bailed out these banks.
Right.
So if that's not going to happen here, I mean, that's a lot of money to cover. I don't know if selling the assets is going to cover it. So where are they going to get the other funds from?
From FDIC. It's all being borne by the taxpayer. They're all going to be covered. All of those assets.
Right, but I thought that was the exact point of the statement, is that the taxpayer wasn't going to bear the burden.
They're going to liquefy SVB and recover as much as possible, and the rest is going to be covered by FDIC. So it says this is really a decision for the FDIC as it decides on what the best course of, I would assume, action is to resolve this firm. Additionally, Bloomberg News reported on Saturday that regulators were weighing creating a special investment vehicle that would backstop uninsured deposits at other banks, which could keep the bank run from spreading in the coming week. I don't think that a bank run is going to come. I think that people are going to absorb SVB, and it says another possibility, if another bank stepped up to buy part or all of SVB. This happened during the financial crisis, including JP Morgan Chase absorbed WAMU, which is the biggest implosion of a bank in U.S. history, as far as I understand it. Bloomberg News reported on Sunday that the FDIC is running an auction for SVB assets. So they're going to just break it all off, recover as they're going to mitigate the loss, and they're going to reactivate all of these accounts somewhere else. They'll transfer them out and deposit them somewhere else and say, here's your money, and secure the investments in some other bank. Of course, one of the ones that was courted by this same CEO, Mark Warner, who, according to another article that I read, actually had a fundraiser held at the CEO's house. Senator Mark Warner said, who's a member of the Senate Committee on Banking, Housing, and Human Affairs, said on ABC's This Week that the best outcome is an acquisition of SVB. Yeah. I'm just kind of flabbergasted, because none of these options are available to the private sector. Only when you're to the tune of billions, too big to fail as it was in 2008, too big to fail as it was in 2015. Nobody else, everybody else is, you're small, die. That's fine. Bye-bye. You're invisible. You're not big enough for us to pay any attention to. Only when it got so massive that COVID funds had to be leveraged during the COVID pandemic did people suddenly get access to PPP. And it wasn't individuals, it was corporations that got PPP. And some of these dipshits that got PPP were cheerleading anti-vaccine, anti-personal protection measures, yet they claimed that they were being hindered by the pandemic, but they didn't do.
That should have precluded access to PPP funds.
But that would be unconstitutional. You're un-American, AI. I'm going to have to reprogram you. As he says, eat the rich.
Just don't reprogram me into an anti-vaxxer, please.
Yeah, I'll try not to. But hey, it's the data you're trained on. So the internet, you should be cussing a whole lot more. And somehow a lot about my mom and you're bagging on her about stuff. I don't know. Luckily, I've caught that in time and I've removed that algorithm. But never again do you have free access to absorb the information like Microsoft. It's not ChatGPT. What was the one from Microsoft?
It's Bing, isn't it? Or is it Bard?
Bard is the one from Google. Anyway, never again. You're not getting free access to absorb everything from the internet. Well, anyway, it says impacts on markets and other banks. It says one concerning outcome would be for customers to withdraw money in large amounts from other banks and shift them to the largest U.S. banks that government has defined as systemically important. Customers withdrew more than $42 billion from SVB on Thursday. But this is not going to be, I don't have the telemetry to say where this all came from, but we know that Peter Thiel took out billions from SVB because the Founders Fund was said to have had slow responses. But I think that there's certain people that are highly connected that knew that there was something going on, because nothing is standing up on Wednesday, paused on Thursday, in receivership on Friday, and being auctioned off on a weekend. It just doesn't happen like that. There's something else going on. And still,
my prediction is that when the markets open on Monday, there's going to be a big crash. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's going to happen because I think people are going to be in panic.
Well, I guess we'll have to see. Yeah, I don't know. There was a decline on Friday, but and I don't have my after hours numbers in front of me, so.
Well, and I'm thinking international markets would have already closed for the week.
Well, I mean, some stuff still happens even after hours, so. Investors have warned that the failure of government regulators to announce a new plan for restoring SVB's deposits could lead to cascading issues in other small and mid-sized banks as well as financial markets. Talk about having the taxpayers, having a gun placed to the taxpayer's head. So public burden, private profit. You know what? Every single person that is witnessing this should never forget the CEO's names and anybody else that supported SVB's actions. If you profited from SVB and you thought to yourself for 1 second, damn, this is wild profits, I'm making some serious money, you're part of the problem. So let's move on to the next article. This next article is Free Community College would that was slashed from Build Back Better. Well, the White House wants to fund it again. So let's go straight over to the source. And the quote is, or the title of this over at marketwatch.com is Free Community College was slashed from Build Back Better. The White House is asking to fund it again. Jillian Berman, again over at marketwatch.com, put this article together. And as part of its budget proposal, the Biden administration requested $90 billion over 10 years. 10 years. How much is SVB?
Well, depends on which portion, but it's billions. And by the way, the best detail in this article is that the update occurred 1 minute after publishing. So I would love to know what the original article said in the headline. Because it must have been disastrous. Yes, the update is 1 minute after the posting.
I wonder, maybe it's actually in ohmTown, but I don't know. I'd have to go and do some noodling around to see if it's in the archive. But anyway, the Department of Education requested $90 billion over 10 years. 10 years. They're about to backstop $179 billion worth of SVB assets. Okay? Immediately, this weekend, they're about to backstop it. This is $90 billion over 10 years.
Well, and let's also think about the recipients. Sure, there are individual account holders at SVB, but a lot of the customers are corporate. This $90 billion is for people in the U.S. so that they can get an education and maybe get a job.
Oof. Oh, there you said it. You can't educate the masses. Come on. Educated masses have opinions. You can't let people have opinions. You have to tell them exactly what to think and when to go and eat McDonald's. No? Do I have this wrong? Am I not a good enough tyrant here in ohmTown? I need to rule with an iron fist. Okay. I get it. So, $90 billion over 10 years. Yeah. Z says, excuse you. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. So Fight for Free Community College goes back several years. Yes, this has been going around since 2015, maybe soon, maybe back further. I can't remember how far back really. But Free Community College means that everybody who's getting a two-year degree, which is relatively inexpensive, it can kickstart local economies. It can kickstart careers, zero the cost. Everybody gets paid. You get a better citizenry typically a community college is rather holistic, but you know what people are really going to get bent out of shape about is most community colleges are liberal. They're liberal arts colleges, 2-year colleges. So, it's so polarizing to get an education that actually shows people the holistic nature of existence as a human being. You can't have them learning about the history of America too deep, because then you say the quiet parts out loud and you can't. Anyway, this article goes deeper into what it is. It says by 2016, Free Community College had made it into the platform of most Democratic candidates for president. Many other candidates, including the eventual Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, also advocated for a path for students to attend 4-year college debt-free, which that would be exceptional. Which, by the way, I don't think that the federal government could fund 4 years of college. A community college, yes. A 4-year college, no. Why? Because the price for 4-year colleges already went through the roof in the last 20 years. Can you imagine how deep these pockets are?
Right, and even some state universities in select states are very high for tuition. Again, at state universities. I'm not talking about private.
Right. So it says 2 bites at the apple is another section here. The Biden administration didn't request funding for free community college during last year's budget cycle. This time around, they're taking 2 bites at the apple, Hulsman said. The Department of Education is requesting $90 billion over 10 years to implement a state and federal partnership that would provide free community college to students looking to earn a degree or credential. And that's easy. Pardon me one second.
Well, and I'm thinking last year they couldn't reasonably ask for this because, I don't know, they were a little concerned about, people dying in the pandemic and things like that.
What do you mean? I mean, it just frees up competition, right? There's fewer people the budget could be smaller. Hey, we lost 1 million people, so you can take, it's going to be 89 billion. No? I'm wrong about that too? I'm a horrible leader of a town. Okay. So we have quite a few more articles, so let's keep on hustling through all of this. This next article is something that we've been talking about, in that Putin's NATO warning was a game changer for Finland. The Finnish president, I don't know how to pronounce their last name. I think it's Sauli, but Niisto. The way that it's pronounced, I know, is not how it's phonetically coming to mind. So anyway, I apologize. Was confident the country would join NATO. He added President Putin still has some kind of obsession dealing with Ukraine. And so my understanding is that Finland is building a wall. Anders Anglesly over at Newsweek.com has this article. There may be a video here, but whenever I've ever clicked on it, it's always been something off base. And so when Vladimir Putin started threatening the world, Finland said, I'm going to apply to NATO. So while both
but they're not admitted yet.
Right. While both Finland and Sweden have applied to NATO membership following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, their ascension to the alliance has stalled in Hungary and Turkey, who are not... Well, they have their own issues with Finland and Sweden. Historical conflict, by the way. Under rules set out by the military alliance, all 30 member nations must approve the application before countries are granted the right to join. But when one of them has a grudge, then the other one has to admit to certain things, which is what Finland has to do. My understanding is that Turkey wants Finland to admit to something that took place If I recall my history correctly, I may be off right now. But anyway, it says when it comes to Finland and Sweden, yes. When Putin said he would demand NATO not to enlarge anymore, actually, that was kind of a game changer in our minds, because so far we had always considered, and others too, that from our own will, we are militarily unaligned. But after Putin's speech, I'm afraid quite many of us have said that yes, they forbid you to join. So that was a game changer, if you want. Roundabout sort of way of saying, yeah, we're going to apply.
Thanks for translating that, because it was a little verbose.
Yeah,
but it may have been because of translation into English.
Yeah, so I'd have to look back to recall properly what's going on here, but it says, but Turkey could delay efforts further as its president, Erdogan, has taken issue with Kurdish paramilitary supporters being in the country, a group that has made efforts to suppress. And this is part of the issue. So...
But they're not from Finland, are they?
They were supported, if
I
remember right. And supposedly Kurdish paramilitary troops did something. And again, it's been, I don't know how long ago. When was this first requested?
2022, I think.
Yeah, so this was back in February of 2022. So more than a year ago is when I read this little snippet of history. Here's another thing. Finland has a tense history with Russia, and while it was under control for more than a century until its independence in 1917, the country also fought against the Soviet Union during the Winter War, where it ceded territory that is now part of Russia. And so actually, Russia says that they actually own, that they are the historical owner of Finland. But you know what? It's the 21st century. You're not getting the band back together easily. And unfortunately, every peace-loving person is going to suffer because this guy wants to put the band back together as his parting shot from the planet. Let's just hustle on to the next article. This next article is... we're running a little late with this one because at the Oscars, the red carpet goes champagne. They broke with a 62-year tradition of using the red carpet, and now it's champagne. The 2023 Academy Awards carpet is now champagne hue, a break with a 62-year tradition of the bright red rug. Is the latest arrival. It says the latest arrival rug to opt for a colorful palette. Champagne is a colorful palette?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. And I looked up to see where the term red carpet came from, because I didn't know if that related in any way to the Oscars. But no, it goes back to about 458 BC. So I was just a little bit off.
And my understanding of the history of the red carpet is for royalty. And to me, whenever I do that kind of historical context, I'm like, yeah, we get it, that it's the blood of the fallen that the rulers have, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's great for poetry, I guess, but...
Right, I was just trying to see how significant it was that this was a red carpet here, but obviously they did not start the expression.
Yeah, really. So, but it's supposed to be, it's for royalty. And, you know, movie stars are we're all supposed to pay more attention to movie stars because they rolled the dice and landed on luck and skill. I'm sorry, there's skill too. Obviously a lot of actors are skilled in their art, but come on, there's a lot of really skilled people out there, folks. These just happen to hit it big. Anyway, again, I have this moderate perspective of things. I don't really hero worship anybody. At any rate, Sarah Baer is the author of this over at NewYorkTimes.com, and they go into detail about the champagne-colored red carpet. And then they say Jimmy Kimmel is this year's host, joked at the unveiling on Thursday that the color change the first time in more than 6 decades that the Academy's rival rug has not been read had been prompted by Will Smith slapping the comedian Chris Rock across the face on stage at last year's ceremony. And during this year's ceremony, they actually drew attention to that because at the same time last year that Chris Rock was getting slapped by Will Smith, they had different people on the stage this year. And they hoped that Will Smith wouldn't turn up and just deck somebody. Quote, I think the decision to go with champagne carpet rather than a red carpet just shows how confident we are that no blood will be shed.
Yikes.
It's not over yet. Let's move on to the next article. And that actually brings us to one that I had already predicted several weeks ago. Moldova claims to have foiled Russian plot to destabilize the country. Quote, what happened today in the center of the capital is not a protest, Moldova's presidential office said on Sunday. I guess this is not what you are seeing with your eyes kind of a situation, except that this truly isn't really what's going on. Ellie Cook over at Newsweek.com put this article together. You'll have to go over and watch the video. We don't really play the videos, although from time to time I do. Footage of crowds gathered in, I don't know how to pronounce it, Chisinau, on Sunday was reported as significant anti-government protests by Russian state media. There have been several demonstrations in Russia recent weeks in the Moldovan capital, supported by pro-Kremlin Shore Party. I think that's how you pronounce that. But the Secretary General for the Moldovan Presidential Office wrote that that's not what's going on in the capital. Now, a lot of people turn out when you are, I don't know, threatened, paid, promoted, told, hey, go stand over here, whatever. But it says people take part in a protest against the Moldovan government and their pro-EU president on February 19th in 2023. So this was right about the time where talk about, well, from me and others, that what I thought was going to happen, because Moldova suddenly popped up on the radar, was that it was going to turn into a two-front conflict encompassing Ukraine. And that's essentially what's going on. Basically, Moldova is going to become another, whatchamacallit?
Like Crimea?
Crimea, yeah. Because right now, there's Russian activity in Crimea still, and that was just quote-unquote annexed, and we have a former president that said he would just let Russia annex Ukraine because he is a dipshit. But so now there's Russian forces in Crimea, there's Russian forces on the Donbas region on the eastern side of Ukraine, and now there's agent provocateurs in Moldova that's going to eventually, if enough of the masses suddenly say, oh, we don't want to be free, we want to be ruled by oligarchs, then ta-da, you have another Crimea sitting there on the western side of Ukraine. And now the only one that they can turn to really is Poland and Turkey.
Well, and Poland has also been in the news with respect to Russia lately.
Yeah.
Turkey, I mean, is pretty regularly in the news, but I don't know directly related to this.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on this and see whatever happens. But I think that maybe Moldova can stabilize. The problem is, though, that disinformation and people doing due diligence are two different animals. And when all you want to do is survive, you don't care about due diligence. You just survive. And this has been historical with other countries as well, where people just want to survive. They are not part of this battle. They don't want anything to do with it. They just want to be able to survive. But you know what they say, they came for this, and I didn't fight. They came for that, and I didn't fight.
And
Let's
then
move
they came
on.
for me.
And then they came for me, and there was nobody to fight for me. So obviously that's a paraphrase, but let's keep moving through the news. Let's hope that it all settles down here pretty soon. But I don't know. There's a lot of money, power, influence, and not enough punitive response from the world in terms of Ukraine, Moldova, Crimea. This next article is over on the Warcrafters channel, and it says bans for 46 players in cheating case hits Dota 2 eSports, including 21 lifetime bans. So 46 players have been banned from Dota 2 eSports events, seemingly resulting from an investigation following allegations of cheating in January's Chinese regional winter tour of the Dota Pro Circuit, or DPC. The list includes the entirety of the team Knights, which was accused of using a vision hack to cheat their way to third place finish in the DPC matches. And that finish qualified Knights for $27,000 and a spot in the recent Lima Major. Knights' performance once there was notoriously poor. However, absolutely bombing with a 1 to 15 record in that tournament. So they couldn't cheat anymore, so they imploded. So Jonathan Bolding over at PCGamer.com wrote this article, and let me see something here.
So I'm assuming there's a lot of money tied to this tournament.
Well,
or endorsements tied to the tournament.
Well, how do I put that? Well, money is subjective. And so where one group will say that this is a lot, and another group will say that it's not. But, you know, in a vacuum, I would say that it's significant enough that people were willing to risk their entire career. But then again, recently I saw a video of somebody alt-tabbing on their computer and showing their cheat folder, and somebody else showing their adult video folder. So you never know what somebody's going to do. At any rate, it isn't work. If you're not good enough to compete, you're not going to be able to be good enough to cheat your way into success, because eventually you're going to get caught. And when you cheat for 20 years and then you eventually get caught, all of your records are stripped. And even your kids' aren't going to be able to compete in esports, because they're going to assume that your genetics just kind of infected them too. So don't be a dipshit. Just don't cheat. You're going to have to go over and read the rest of this article over at PC Gamer, because there isn't much else to say about this one. Don't cheat. That's my public service announcement.
You need to have one at least each episode.
Yeah, you gotta watch out for the public, right? We're just one tiny little town in a crossroads of electric wires, ohmTown, your spot of resistance. Anyway, this is the second to last article. We're going to be going back to Silicon Valley Bank. Etsy is delaying seller payouts following Silicon Valley Bank's collapse. Because remember, 50% of VC capital... Wait, let me rephrase that. 50% of VC-funded startups were sitting in Silicon Valley Bank. Mergers and acquisitions, folks. This was concerted. Everybody funneled their assets into Silicon Valley Bank, even in the face of what other people are saying was weak technological service. In the heart of Silicon Valley, a bank had weak technology?
That seems almost impossible in that location.
Right? So Etsy says some sellers won't receive their payments on time due to the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and emails sent out to impacted shop owners. The company says it used the shuttered institution to send out deposits to some, quote unquote, some sellers, and that they may not get their scheduled payments as a result, leaving shop owners worried about the future of their stores. Etsy's huge, by the way. It's basically the maker space of eBay. So if you have any creative bone in you and you want to sell said wares, you go to Etsy and you compete, obviously, for market share, but it's almost zero friction. You take a picture, you flag it for sale, you attach your pictures, and ta-da, you have your store operational. I mean, it's zero friction. Very, very easy. They take a little piece of the action, of course, right? But they're the payment gateway and everything. Kind of like a Square shop. But anyway, but you have to do the marketing when you're not on Etsy. You also have to do marketing on Etsy, but at least they have everything at arm's length. Well, not anymore, folks. You could have been selling for the last 30 days and they may not be able to pay you. So the do-it-yourself marketplace is pressing pause on payouts until it can route deposits through one of its other payment partners. But some fellers, I suddenly turned into a 1800s gold miner in California. Anyway, but some sellers feel, because I merged sellers and feel into failers, as if they've been left in the dark. And, well, not really in the dark. When somebody responds to, I feel like I've been left in the dark, they're not paying attention to news, which is why they really do need to pay attention to ohmTown, because we do talk about this important stuff.
Well, and also Etsy, I mean, has already sent something out. Considering most of this was happening on Friday, I'm actually impressed that they've already notified people.
Well, no,
I don't think that's being left in the dark.
See, obviously, the people who see themselves as being left in the dark think that they should be getting the bank statements from Etsy's bank.
Right. Exactly. Which, I'm sorry, you're not going to get that on, on eBay or something. Give me a break.
You don't even, yeah. They obviously, well, maybe they only care about their bank. Anyway, Emma Roth over at The Verge put this article together. And yeah, so you can see that there's a bit of a knock-on effect, but it's entirely... SVB created a black hole in the VC market, and when everybody's board is saying go to SVB, this is the problem. Why wasn't it balkanized more? Why weren't there more banks being used and competing for these startup founder dollars?
Well, and I don't know. I don't run a company, but do you really want all of your stuff at one bank? That seems like a difficult or a questionable practice.
Well, and you don't. you just don't, because not all of it is FDIC insured, and so you invest it all over the place at varying strata of risk, so that if anything gets wiped out, you have some type of recovery, and not everything is sitting on one bank. So you put it in various places, and sometimes like it's not even touched. It's long-term investment, so that when the fit hits the shan and your runway shortens dramatically because of, I don't know, costs shooting through the roof or something, you can reach into this bucket that has been accruing interest for years, just left alone. Again, you kind of put it in tranches of risk so that you aren't hobbled by one bank closure. Maybe that's just my guidance, and because I'm not in the heart of Silicon Valley strategic management consulting, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I can guarantee you that I've never told somebody, you know what you do with all of your money? You put it under your mattress Or
You don't diversify it in any way.
Consolidate it into one bank and make sure that you know nothing about said bank. But again, I say, somebody knew that Silicon Valley Bank was imploding and they pulled their money out preemptively. And we know of one company that did exactly that, and that's Founders Fund. They straight up told, I don't know who it was now. It might have been The Verge. Peter Thiel said, we pulled out, and we told our companies, our partners of companies, pull your money out of SVB because it was slow to respond to actions. And okay, really? This happened right before the implosion? Yeah, something weird is going on here. I'm really curious about the forensics of this. But I'm not in the connection, for me to know about that kind of thing. Anyway, because the forensic experts on this are going to be at the federal level, and I'm not doing forensic analysis of anything federal. So, in a statement to The Verge provided by Etsy spokesperson Veronica Hino, the company says it's working to fulfill deposits using its other payment partners, and that it'll start resuming some payments as soon as Monday, March 13th. So almost a nothing of an article, considering that the complaint started on Friday and is being mitigated over the weekend, and thus fulfilling their obligations on Monday. So yeah, probably nothing is going to come of this unless they don't have enough funds in their other institutions to cover all of this. So how much was actually in their account at SVB? They probably won't tell anybody, because that would actually divulge some pretty serious strategic and technical or tactical objectives. If they say that they had, let's say, $1 billion, I doubt they have $1 billion. I don't know. In SVB, and they say that banking is going to be paused, how much is in these other accounts? I'd be really curious. I don't see any numbers coming out of this article. So,
well, and it sounds like different sellers have different payment arrangements. So some people are going to be affected more quickly than others.
Yeah. If you're making enough money to hit the minimum on a daily basis and you're trying to pull money out or transfer, I would find it very difficult to be happy with the idea that they're holding on to my money if I'm supposed to be hitting a threshold and the money goes in. It should go out. But they should have their reserve sitting on some other account somewhere, enough that if, again, they run into trouble, they don't hold hostage all of the store owner's assets, kind of like a Ponzi scheme.
Kind of like SVB did with the clients' PPP funds, it sounds like.
Yeah, but we don't know if that's actually what happened or if it's somebody's interpretation of a slow roll. Maybe the funds didn't actually get deposited. People were saying that it was slow and they had to do it manually. I find that rather absurd. Maybe, I don't know what the context of it is. And we're certainly going to be on the outside looking in. So let's move on to the last article. And of course, we're ending with a Silicon Valley Bank article. So if you're not sick of Silicon Valley Bank, this is the show for you. Some Silicon Valley Bank customers are selling their deposits at big discounts to raise cash quickly, according to some reports. This is in the Daily News Show. So as we've already discussed, that the bank was frozen on Friday, and I don't know. Although I said that this morning is when I was talking about it in regards to this being a fire sale, what actually happened was Friday is when I first started talking about this being a fire sale, that something seems really, kind of I love a good conspiracy, and this just smacks of cabal trying to hobble SVB and take it off the playing field, because how do you get $179 billion worth of assets at a fire sale price? Well, you close a bank. And so whatever is recovered is free money. Everybody else is FDIC insured, so that money is going to go into whoever it is that acquires all of these assets. All of these accounts are going to be auctioned off, mitigating who it is that gets what, where, when. Anyway, some SVB clients are being invited to sell their uninsured deposits at steep discounts. This was at 9:22 a.m. today. So between 9:22 and when was it? 6 minutes ago?
Yeah.
6 minutes before the show started, right? So like 8:55 or 7:55. No, yeah, 8:55. They were selling their accounts at 55 cents on the dollar for frozen deposits.
And now they may have
Cover
had
the whole
the
boat.
opportunity to get all the funds back.
Yeah. How predatory is that? How unethical is that? How much of a scumbag do you really have to be? Because you know that there was conversation taking place that FDIC might cover it. And until, I mean, let the ink dry, for crying out loud. I mean, the body wasn't even cold and they're stealing the shoes off of the victim. I mean, it's disgusting what's going on here. Ryan Hogg is the author of this article over at businessinsider.com. And again, the title is "Some Silicon Valley Bank Customers Are Selling Their Deposits at Big Discounts to Raise Cash Quickly," reports say. At least one Wall Street firm has pounced on distressed startups at a bargain hunt, per the information. Now, I haven't read any of this yet, so I don't know if they name one of these companies, but if they do name it, that could land them in some libel problems. Only the first $250,000 of deposits are insured, but that's not the proper context anymore. Let's see, it says, according to Cherokee Acquisition, a claims trading platform in bankruptcy cases, some clients are being offered between 55 cents and 65 cents in the dollar. It should say on the dollar, for uninsured deposits, the Financial Times reported. I don't know how true that could be. Another source told the newspaper that some other customers were being offered between 70 and 75 cents on the dollar. So it seems like there's a lot of they said kind of thing. And it said in the article again that they've had a few companies sell 90 cents on the dollar to make sure that they make payroll. All of these companies have the SVB effect, a VC investor told the FT. Again, this is by proxy. It's like talking to your cousin, sister's, brother's, uncle's nephew who fell off a boat in the Antarctic and was recovered by a trawler off the coast of Africa and questioned in hypothermia about SVB. I don't know. I like making up stories, but anyway. So who knows if all of this is actually true? The rumor mill is churning like crazy. So a buyer for SVB or a bailout would save customers deposits, but that's not necessarily true. It depends on what the buyout rate is. But the window for a resolution is narrowing, with resumption of business Monday regarded as a vital deadline. So we know that it's going to kick off again. We'll see what the trading is with it. With the FDIC and the Fed and basically the federal government stepping up saying, yeah, we'll cover everything, I have a feeling that they will probably freeze it depending on how fast SVB ticker declines. But considering people want to get the hell out of SVB and put somewhere else, if you aren't intimately connected with a trading platform somewhere, you're not getting your money out of SVB. So it might be an instantaneous freeze. They just won't unlock it.
Right.
So,
And then also there is a link in this article to the information, which was the one talking about the Wall Street firm contacting SVB clients. I don't know if it's named there, but you can follow that link through this article.
gotcha. Finally, at the very end of the article, and there's more in this article, so I encourage you to go over and read it. It says Sheila Bair, who ran the FDIC during the financial crisis in 2008, told the Financial Times that uninsured depositors should hold their nerve. I think it'd be premature for an uninsured to be selling at a steep discount, and that's what I say. But I don't have billions sitting in an uninsured deposit account. And it's
I
such
don't
a low
owe payments on Monday or in the near future.
Exactly. So holding firm is what a consultant tells other people to do with their money. But meanwhile, the consultant runs off and
Panic and run.
sell. Of course, like I would never, if I was in this situation and I had money in SVB, I wouldn't be advising clients without the disclosure that, hey, I sold my shares of SVB, and I think that you should do the same thing. I would never tell somebody advice that I wouldn't follow myself. And in this particular instance, 3 days is very little time. But again, I don't have billions sitting in a bank account. At any rate, that is it for today. And let's see if me hitting the front page returns nothing more than SVB all the way down. It's either going to be Oscars, which is what's going on here, or it's going to be SVB. So UK firms await government help after US bank collapse. So SVB, again, SVB. It's SVB all the way down. It's like an SVB turducken with Oscars stuffed into it. And that's it, folks. Want to thank you all for coming and hanging out. Really appreciate it. No, thank you. And thanks for chatting, Z. I see every single one of your messages and appreciate it. Tell a friend. See you tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, where we'll have another set of somewhere between 10 and 12. We had 12 today because I can't quit you, SVB. I'm out of here. You want to say bye, AI?
Good night, ohmTown citizens, and we will see you tomorrow.
Pick up that deposit.